Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. We've all seen the cliches. Good things happen to people who do good things. Play it forward. Bread poured upon the rivers returns back tenfold. God does not always pay on Sundays, etc. Life is more like no good deed goes unpunished. Of course, that was not my thinking when a scruffy biker-looking man approached me late one night as I was taking the nozzle away from a well-worn pickup vehicle after filling up with gas. "Hey, buddy, can you help a scrambler out?" he said, glancing around. Now I see why this man assumed I was a biker. I wore a skull and crossbones scarf around my head, which supported mirrored sunglasses. A scruffy beard matched the black splotches on my oil-splattered, ripped jeans. My '64 frame, not so insignificant belly, which a leather vest and dirty Indian t-shirt did not do a good job of hiding, and I looked like the stereotypical biker, but looks can be deceiving, as I was a complete poser. Not only could I barely ride a tricycle, but I had trouble with any car not equipped with an automatic transmission. I was at this gas station only to fill up my dad's truck after returning from a costume party at his house. But what the hell? "What do you need, pal?" I said as I put away a massive billfold, complete with a chain I had purchased last week at a flea market. The biker looked around nervously before speaking. "I must have been doing a ton when I and the cruiser ate some pavement back there." He pointed out to the darkness beyond the gas station. "Jammed the fork in a damn pothole and got me some road rash doing an OTB. It took me long to hoof it here." This man was quite the chatterbox, but I had no understanding what he was saying, so I remained silent. "I need your help." He beat on the side of my vehicle to pick up my ride and drive me back to the home. The biker took out a wad of cash from his pocket. "I can get more at the compound from the club if you need." "Put that away," I said as I waved at the money in the chatterbox's hand. I was having an internal debate. This was a chance to see the inside of a real motorcycle hangout. That beat my day job of moving numbers around on a spreadsheet any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I tried to act calm as I scratched at my beard, which had taken me 2 months to grow for the costume party. "Get in," I muttered, and the chatty motorcyclist paused for a moment before smiling and opening the passenger door. The twins came into the house the following morning, making me spill my coffee with the exuberance of 4-year-old boys. Daddy, see what Gramps brought us." They were still dressed in their Batman costumes from the night before, but they were wielding plastic baseball bats. My wife ran after them. "Boys, change quickly so you may play outdoors." The children rushed to their rooms, whacking each other with baseball bats as they went down the corridor. "How is Dad?" I inquired as I poured her a cup of coffee, and she shrugged before sitting down. "Your dad was thrilled to see the boys," she added. Dad and I had never bonded, even though I had a solid, stable job as an administrative assistant. Dad was not delighted when I informed him I was going to marry him, Brandon. Dad had said, "Why are you settling for such a plain, drab, uninteresting woman? The only reason I can see you marrying her is because you are the best she can get right now." Dad loves me and I adore her. We have the same interests, ambitions, aspirations, and values. "Why are you trying to dampen my mood?" Dad just waved his hand. "Blah. You'll both live gloomy, boring lives until one of you decides you want something better. Damn it, son. Live a little. Go get drunk, screw some strangers, and scream at the moon. Otherwise, you'll be burdened with 2.5 kids, a mortgaged home, and an 8.2 for job as a drone. Do you want your lives highlight to be a 2-week trip to Adventure Kingdom or the Grand Canyon? That type of depressing life is not living, but rather waiting to die." I didn't think it was boring, and Lindsay seemed to enjoy our life. Dad didn't persuade me to leave her, and to be honest, we both worked 8 to 4 jobs for the county, and we looked forward to taking the twins to Adventure Kingdom. We had always lived that way, so how would we know the difference? Lindsay's remarks brought me back to the present. Your father appeared to enjoy the party. "It's the first time he said anything nice to me since your mother died," she murmured, placing her palm over her heart. "Did Dad give you a compliment?" I glanced sheepishly over the lip of my coffee cup. "Yes, he enjoyed my Catwoman costume. He said he'd love to watch me climb a wall." Lindsay said, "Your dad wants his vehicle back right immediately. You know how he dislikes having to drive your Volt hybrid." I smirked. I was never a father knows best TV program sort of guy. His bedtime tales went something like this, and all the kids cleaned their room, got Dad a beer, and went straight to bed. Lindsay chuckled as I relaxed back in my chair. "But let me tell you about my little adventure with Dad's truck last night," I continued. and she sat captivated as I recounted the events. When I finished, she couldn't stop asking questions until she ran out of them. Brandon, were you really in a motorcycle clubhouse? I'm a bit upset with you. What if anything happens? I saw Sons of Anarchy on Stream Zone. I waved my hand at her. Everything was good. They kept trying to persuade me to go to the back room with a female. I saw Lindsay's face turn red, so I quickly added, of course not. I said I was recuperating from an STD. Ratchet, the guy I helped out last night, kept pushing beers on me. Don't you drink? Sure, Lindsay, Brandon the accountant does not drink, but Brandon the outlaw biker can manage a few of beers. But look at what my new BFF got me for a party. I took a little cellophane bag from my shirt pocket. Brandon, what is this? Damn, I thought you were Crystal Code's greatest fan. I believe that is crystal meth. At the very least, it resembles crystal meth. You aren't going to attempt it, are you? I peered down the corridor, where the twins were still whacking each other with their baseball bats. I will pass it over to the sheriff on Monday. That reminds me, I should shave this thing. I ran my fingers over my face. Why don't you wait for that? The lads are busy. Let us go into the bedroom, and you can show me how an outlaw biker respects his old woman. On Monday, I handed over the small bag to the sheriff, who was an old friend from high school, along with my biker story, and on Friday, he called me into his office. I still had my beard and had really gotten into the whole outlaw biker and old lady role-playing. So who was I to argue? If it got me this much attention, I'd be Superman and pretend to fly even though I couldn't even swim. The sheriff had another man in his office, the guy with government written all over him. That dope you bought, his high-quality stuff, we assume it's coming from someplace north, maybe from Canada. We have never been able to develop a logistical path. Do you think you could help us out with some introductions? I couldn't help but giggle. You can't be serious. Last weekend was a weird event. Don't let the beard deceive you. Instead of drugs, I make a career by moving numbers. You must have covert agents for this kind of activity. Oh yes, we do. But we need someone to make introductions, the DEA stated. As a CI, or confidential informant, you may do and say much more than a police officer. We just need a contact. The sheriff interrupted in. Brandon, think of it as an acting part, similar to high school plays. You know, all the world's a stage, kind of stuff. I had done some walk-on parts in high school, college, and even at the local community theater, but this was a whole different ballgame. I looked at both of them in amazement. Sure, everyone is under-rehearsed and unprepared. I don't believe being an elf in the school Christmas performance is the same as pretending to be a meth dealer. The DEA spoke out again. Don't worry, we'll be with you all the way. Oh yeah? How far behind am I? I murmured. The DEA disregarded my statement. Do you know how to contact the guy? I pointed to my head and said, I work with numbers for a job. Remember? I have it right here. 9 months later, the large banquet hall was filled to capacity for the celebration. It was an alphabet of law enforcement agencies, DEA, FBI, IRS, DHS, even the RCMP, along with state troopers and a dozen county sheriff's offices. They were all celebrating the end of Operation Great White, which had netted over 100 arrests and rolled up one of the West's biggest transportation, shipping, and distribution meth operations. Me? I was celebrating the end of my not-so-cons now. I was sitting at a table with my wife and father, accepting constant congratulations from the fellows around the room. My father kept telling me how proud he was of me, even though he was half slushed from the open bar and looking pretty tipsy after more than a few glasses of champagne. My father had his arm around my shoulder. Goddamn, Brandon, my son, you are a true guy after all. I couldn't believe it when that government attorney man got there and stated the police wanted my assistance. I tried not to breathe in my father's alcohol breath. Thank you, Dad. I really appreciate you watching after Lindsay and the boys for me. I understand that must have been tough. Dad grabbed Lindsay with his other arm so suddenly that she dropped her drink. No worries, he slurred. Me and your wife got along well. In fact, we missed you, he said, breaking free from Dad's grasp and hugging me. I missed you. The guys have missed you. I wish you hadn't had to be gone for so long. Suddenly, a screaming feedback filled the room as a tall, gorgeous man attempted to speak into a podium mic. He was the federal attorney assigned to monitor Operation Great White when its breath became clear. Let Razor, the future governor, speak. A drunken voice cried out from the crowd, and the tall guy at the microphone merely grinned and waved at the gathering cops. The cops told me a lot about Nicholas Razor McLean, a member of a wealthy, well-connected political family on the coast. He had been an undergrad at Columbia, law school at Georgetown, and after a stint in the military, he was punching his ticket with the U.S. Attorney's Office to groom him for a future governor's race. As Razor droned on about what a great day this was for law-abiding citizens and how much safer the nation was, his pride, etc., I glanced at my watch, wondering if we could slip away unnoticed. We were unable to slip away and had to wait until the end of the event. Fortunately, a Nicetown car had been provided for us. Dad was well-oiled, repeating himself to the driver about his big, bad undercover son, and was beyond tipsy. He never took his eyes off me, holding my hand in a death grip. I was not in any discomfort and wanted the driver would rush to my house. I don't remember how I came up in the living room alone, but my youngest son shook me awake. "What's up, son? What are you doing up this late?" I asked, still sleepy, and took him into my arms. Mom and Gramps are making a lot of noise in the room, which woke me up. The boys each had their own room, but they moved in together so my father could occupy one of their rooms and remain with Lindsay when I went to the hidden home. I stumbled up the stairs with my drowsy kid, placed him in bed, and then went to my father's room and opened the door. At first, my brain failed to comprehend the picture transmitted by my pupils, and I massaged my eyes, believing it was a side effect of the alcohol I had drunk earlier. The curtain in the window was open. There was a full moon, and the light was so strong that you could read a newspaper by it. But now the moonlight was lighting my nude wife and my similarly naked father performing their best cowgirl riding a bronco imitation. While Lindsay and my father pushed together, I forcefully shook my head and bit the inside of my cheek. The intense pain in my mouth informed me I was awake. I had the weirdest feeling that they hadn't even put down the blanket since the bedspread. Pixar film characters seemed to move and mock me. I don't know how long I stood frozen in place, but the changing pitch of Lindsay's moaning snapped me out of my stupor, as I knew that sound signaled the start of her orgasm. I reached out and yanked Lindsay off my father, throwing her to the floor. Dad must have been on the verge as well, as his semen sprayed all over the main Pixar character from Rapunzel. I picked up my son's small colored plastic desk and slammed it onto the form in the bed, as I walked to the hall closet and pulled down the top shelf, scattering everything until I found what I was looking for. When the bedroom door opened, my wife and dad peeked out, a Lion King sheet partially concealing their nakedness. They both slammed the door shut when I spun around, pointing my grandfather's Korean War-era Colt Model M1 1911.45 pistol at them. I reached the bedroom door in 2 steps and kicked it open in one move. Lindsay and my father were huddled against the far wall. "Brandon, wait," Lindsay cried. "Son, you don't understand," my father began, his forehead bleeding from the impact with the plastic desk. I racked the slide on the .45 handgun and aimed it at my father. I heard a noise and glanced down to see him pissing over himself. "No, Brandon," Lindsay yelled, and I flung the pistol in her direction, then in my father's direction, back and forth. My head was in a complete chaos, and I went to pull the trigger, but at the last second, I yanked the rifle upward, and a shot blasted into the ceiling. No one moved as the gunshot rang, but a little voice stopped me dead in my tracks. "Daddy, I can't sleep." Turning around, I saw my kid standing at the doorway, holding his teddy bear, and everything stopped in time, but the fog in my head cleared as I waved with the rifle barrel at my father and wife. "Get out," I said. "Take the boys. Leave the house." Lindsay rushed past me, scooping my kid as she exited the room, while my father slid down the wall's edge toward the door. "Son, I know this," he began before I backhanded him. The revolver barrel slammed him in the face, throwing him out the door. I sat on the bed and put my head between my knees. It was very awkward at the police station yesterday. I was part of the law enforcement fraternity, but I had put myself on the line, and many of the undercover cops had given what I thought were overblown exaggerations of my exploits to help them in Operation Great White. Also, the fact that the county lockup was overcrowded with arrests from the raids meant I was dead meat if they put me anywhere near the following morning. The sheriff sent me a takeaway dinner and more terrible news. "Brandon, I don't know what to say, so I'll give it to you straight. It looks bad. Your wife has obtained a restraining order against you," the sheriff said with a raised eyebrow. "An ace who doesn't understand filed a bunch of charges already." He was scratching his neck. "The paperwork seems to have been, misplaced for the time being." I glanced at him and said nothing. "Brandon, your wife is in my office right now," the sheriff stated. I grumbled as he went on. If I let her in here, you promise to behave? I mean, I gotta be here, but he'll stand over there in the corner and let you two have your say. I let out a long gasp. I appreciate all you're doing, but there's not much to say. I guess I don't have much control now over what you're going to do, right? The sheriff smiled and went up to the prison, banging twice on the door. We waited in quiet for a few minutes until a deputy opened the door and Lindsay went in. The sheriff rose up and handed Lindsay his chair as he moved to the far corner of the room behind her. Lindsay looked a disaster as she gingerly sat on the given chair about a yard away from me. Brandon, I don't know what to say. How about this? I have a restraining order against you. So you haven't seen your boys in 10 months, and I can't see them anymore because I want to screw their father. I fired back, seeing the sheriff's eyes widen at my words. Lindsay took out a tissue from her handbag. It wasn't like that, Brandon, she murmured, her eyes welling up with tears. Your father is in the hospital right now, you know, following the incident at the home. He experienced chest problems, so they phoned an ambulance. I don't care where your idiotic buddy is. I'm concerned about where my children are. Are they at home? Are they staying with a friend, another of your relatives? How deliverance of you is this? Is it a first cousin you were screwing or an uncle? Lindsay crossed her arms and said, she's a friend from work, not related. I slumped back in my chair. I didn't know you swung both ways, but I guess there's a lot I didn't know. Brandon, stop this. It's not helping. Oh, I'm sorry, Lindsay. My first time dealing with incest, not to mention a cheating wife and having my children kept from me. I'll need your guidance in this area. Your father and I are not blood related. I will get the restraining order dropped, she told me. He'll refuse to testify against you about anything. I was scared. You pointed a gun at me, she replied, her voice wavering. My apologies. I was unsure of the rules when you come across your wife screwing her father-in-law. Brandon, you must let me explain. I know you have it in you to forgive me. Why? Even the devil believes in God. Why should I want to forgive you or believe you? Because we belong together. You can search the far corners of the globe and never find a mate like me. Well, thank God the world is round. So, you're inbred and can stay in some skanky dark corner where you belong. What else have you got? I said, attempting to maintain my voice. I can't imagine how upset you were, Brandon, Lindsay remarked, her eyes full with sadness. So, I will give you some time to digest all this, but please understand, it was never planned. I just missed you so much. I was so lonely, and your dad suddenly became nice to me. It was like he was a different person when he found out you were working undercover. He was busting his buttons trying to keep the secret. She was wiping her eyes. We would sit around the table after the twins had gone to bed, and he had his beer, and me with a few glasses of wine. Please don't go with the booze made me do it excuse, said I. I won't insult you by saying that. It's just your dad. He's not my dad anymore, she said, stunned. He started talking about your mom and the good times they had. This made me miss you even more. One night we were trading funny, blue stories like the time the kids almost caught us having sex in the shower. He told some stories about your mom back in their younger days. Suddenly, he got so sad, and you know how I am after a few glasses of wine. Next thing you know, I raised my hand to stop her. Sheriff, I said, glancing at him. Can I borrow 2 of your pens, please? The sheriff stared at me curiously. Why do you want 2 of my pens? So I can poke my eardrums out before this, which starts giving me details about screwing my mom's husband. Lindsay's cheeks became crimson red. I wasn't going to go into details, Brandon. I just wanted to say how it started and how aghast I was in the morning. Give you some context. Great, I said, throwing my hands up. Screw him once, screw him every day. What's the difference, right? Lindsay began to get agitated. It was not like that. I stayed away from him. I even considered asking him to move back to his house, but that would have just hurt the twins. They were already acting out because you were gone. She took a break. Then 3 weeks later, I was having a really bad day. I hadn't heard from you in a week. I was depressed. Work was terrible, and the twins were acting their age. Everything was just a mess. I broke down crying that evening, and your dad, he was just so understanding. It wasn't for the sex. It was for the comfort. What? You were screwing him for comfort. I broke down. Lindsay's face was pallid. There was no cookie dough ice cream in the house. Brandon. I sat back in my chair. Was the night of my triumphant return the final big bang? One more screw for old time's sake? I asked her, seeing her uncomfortable expression. Lindsay seemed guilty, her voice trembling. I am so sorry, Brandon. That last time was the most stupid mistake I could have made. I was so happy and horny that you were back. Plus, I really had a lot to drink. Your dad talked me into it, one last time. Just for closure. He said he wouldn't let me leave the room. He kept pestering me. You were passed out on the sofa downstairs. My booze-addled mind told me one more time wouldn't matter. I closed my eyes for a second. And for the first time in 10 months, I was going to make love to my wife, but you were going to give me his sloppy seconds. Lindsay's eyes started to tear up. That wasn't what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. At most, I thought you were out for the count, and I could bathe later, be all fresh and ready for you in the morning. Would make a whole day catching up. I took a big breath. You do know this means divorce, right? I cannot live with what you did to me. I know it's going to be tough on the kids, but I can't live with you after that. I may not be some macho guy, but I do have some self-respect. Lindsay was heading my way. Brandon, do you just want me to crawl into a hole someplace? Is that it? Go away and suffer a slow and painful death? No, I said coldly. I do not wish you a slow and painful death. Something quick, perhaps, like an airplane crash. There's shock on her face. I already have a suit picked out for your funeral. However, if you want me to speak at the burial, don't expect any kind words at your portion this time. She sprang up, dashed to the exit as the sheriff hammered twice, and fled as the deputy opened the door. I was detained for another day because no one knew what to do with me. I fluctuated between melancholy and resignation. A regular stream of officers, both undercover and not, who I had worked with came in to commiserate. Most people had been divorced at least once. I think that comes with the territory. Few had pleasant comments for their ex-wives, and I heard a lot of horror tales about divorce court. I suppose their advice might best be summarized as, don't be crazy. On the third day, 2 guys with government written all over them led me to a large suite in a downtown hotel. I was astonished to find Razor, the federal district attorney who had handled Operation Great White and was managing the federal court case against many of the big players, in the center of the room, taking a mobile phone call in front of a window overlooking the city. He motioned me to a luxurious chair with a silver coffee service placed out. When Razor finished his call, I got myself a cup of coffee and took a seat across from him. What the hell is this, Jerry Springer, __, you got going on? You replied. I didn't need this kind of sideshow screwing up the biggest case of my career. Razor may be a federal attorney, but I was done playing. What was he planning to do? Throw me into jail? Take my children away from me? GT. I'm sorry my wife having an affair and screwing my own father is interfering with your political career. I'll ask the 304 to take more care with her partners in the future so as not to inconvenience you. Razor had a stunned expression on his face before breaking into a chuckle. You got a big set of balls on you, don't you? He took up his coffee cup. I should have known that after reading the reports of some of the stuff you pulled during this operation. I continued sipping my coffee. We need this to go away, Brandon, Razor remarked. I relied largely on the state attorney to withhold the charges that Dipwad's office had filed. That office is in the process of receiving a large federal grant, and he does not want me to impede it. There will be a lot of hard lifting, and I need you to be one of my star witnesses. Get his mind into the game. What should I do to make you happy? Easy, I said. First, I want to see my kids like yesterday. Razor nodded, typing something on his computer table, and get me a divorce from that inbred, __, of a wife. Well, Brandon, are you sure you want to get rid of the lady over some minor bedroom antics? Razor inquired, gazing at me as if I were insane. Razor, that woman screwed my own father in my son's bedroom. Razor just shrugged. So my father has a series of mistresses throughout the globe. My mother is banging every legal age pool guy and tennis pro. They'll be married 28 years next June. The key thing is that they support one another when they are in need. Marriage is all about looks and what your partner can do for you. It is not the Middle Ages. You do not own each other's bodies. I glanced around. Maybe in your crowd, but I take forsaking all others seriously. Razor leaned back. How about till death do us part, or for better or worse? Do you remember those passages of your marriage contract? I set down my cup. Well, I don't want you to kill her. Razor patted me on the shoulder and chuckled. You would have been an excellent lawyer. Always hunting for loopholes. Let me schedule a meeting and see what I can accomplish. Razor followed through on his promise of allowing me to see my children, even though Lindsay was unable to do so because the restraining order was still in effect. He had U.S. federal marshals pick up and watch over the kids while they were visiting me, which reinforced Lindsay's concerns about the danger I posed. I was still barred from my home, but Razor took care of that as well. Brandon, this 3-bedroom suite is all yours. Order everything you desire, from clothing to a group of call ladies. Razor stated, as we like to say in government service, nothing is too good when it comes to someone else's money. Thanks, Razor, but I don't need 3 bedrooms. I glanced around the massive suite. Razor waved his hand. Well, 2 of the bedrooms are for the United States. Marshals are keeping you company. You infuriated some really aggressive individuals. I need to keep you secure. This wouldn't have anything to do with keeping me away from Lindsay or out of prison, would it? I asked. Razor offered me what seemed to be a campaign grin and said, now you see the big picture. You understand. We are not dealing with the monkey world. Let me attempt to take care of it, okay? A week later, we were sat in a huge conference room at some legal firm. Razor was friends with Lindsay and wanted to sit next to me, but I got up and walked to the other side of the table. Razor appeared angry by my move. Okay, can we stop playing musical chairs now? Razor said, clapping his hands. The goal of our little gathering is to figure out how to make all parties involved whole. Lindsay stood up. I didn't want any of this. I simply want Brandon to come home and forget everything so we can start again like it never happened. Razor turned to me. Brandon? I glanced back at him. Not going to happen. That's like saying, if dinosaurs had spaceships, they'd still be alive today. I stared at Lindsay. Don't start. Lindsay's expression softened. There is still hope for us. I looked at her angrily. Hope is a symptom of folly. My life is finished now. I cannot remain in this place any longer. I need to quit my job, relocate, and start over. Razor touched the table. That's nice. Finally, somewhere I can aid you both. Brandon, I can put you in the WITSEC or Witness Security Program, which is operated by the United States Marshals, more generally referred to as the Witness Protection Program. You both receive new identities, employment, and a completely fresh start, like a gigantic do-over. Lindsay was having none of it. I'm not uprooting my entire family. I've lived here my whole life. All of my pals are here, including my hairstylist and OBGYN. I simply can't pack up and start over. Razor tried to calm her, saying, I assure you that there are many fine stylists and competent medical professionals in other parts of the country. The United States Marshals Service has an excellent program to get you set up, which includes everything from dentists to childcare. Everything will be fine in the end. Lindsay crossed her arms. What if it isn't okay? Razor shrugged. Then it's not the end yet. Razor's mobile phone rang, and he grimaced at the number. Excuse me, I need to take this, he murmured, heading to a corner of the room and turning his back on us. I sat in quiet for a long, gazing at the floor, lost in contemplation. Lindsay, meanwhile, was more apprehensive than ever. Brandon, she began, breaking the stillness. We need to stop this farce. I realize that I made a huge mistake, but you must also accept responsibility. If you had been thinking about your family instead of playing superhero, we wouldn't be in this problem. Lindsay, you were the one who slept with my father. What responsibility am I expected to bear in that? Lindsay lifted her hands in surrender. I understand, Brandon. I'm not blaming you. But, look at you. You can only think about yourself. The hospital has phoned your father and requested your presence. Have you ever seen him? I swallowed hard. Yes, Lindsay, I have seen him. I saw you and him screwing in my son's room on the Rapunzel bedspread. When I shut my eyes, I see it. I may never see another Pixar film again. She clenched her teeth. I realize I made a mistake, but I'm only human. I've given you time to get over it. Now it's time to put on your big boy trousers and go on with our lives. I looked at her for a time. So that's your solution? You pull down your big girl pants to screw your child's grandpa, and I should get over it? Lindsay faltered. I didn't say it would be easy. I sneered, saying, go do whatever it takes to make things right in your opinion. Go screw a lot of ladies if you believe it would level things out. At least I can contact your sister. Lindsay's expression was shocked. You wouldn't. I grinned, realizing I had struck a chord. Sure, and why not? She has always liked me. That was somewhat of true, right? In actuality, your sister, like all males, was constantly looking for a good time. Lindsay stuttered, my sister is off limits. I shrugged. You want me to screw your mother? You are unwell. She is old enough to be your mother. Really, Brandon? You banned a gentleman, several times, who was old enough to be your children's grandpa. Lindsay remained silent, discouraged. It wasn't very frequently, Brandon. Don't make it bigger than it was. The Jerry Springer Show is the only location where banging your family is acceptable conduct. I'm sorry, I said coldly. What else do you want from me? Lindsay averted her eyes. I want to divorce your inbred, white trash, trailer park hillbilly ass. I shook my head and said, God damn it, Brandon. I am the mother of your children, not any of that. I laughed harshly. Really? What do you call it when someone defrauds their relatives? Lindsay eventually burst into tears, shaking her head. A mistake. A single stupid error in judgment that will never be repeated. I gazed at her for a long time, feeling my wrath rise again. I am not going to wait forever, Brandon, and I am not going to pay for it for the rest of my life because your ego can't take a little hit. Lindsay glared me down, divorce me, and I will do everything in my power to keep your children away from you. I don't care who your big shot pals are, she said to Razor, who was on the phone in the corner. It will be like sandpaper. I will use all methods necessary to wear you down. Just then, Razor concluded his call and returned to the table, flashing his vote-winning grin. Okay, now where were we? He asked. The next few months had me wishing for my boring life back. The days were filled with depositions with the armies of law firms the defendants from Operation Great White had snagged. The evenings were spent in debriefings and going over reams of reports and transcripts from the operation. I felt like the Great White dope forever getting involved in the whole mess. The only bright spot was getting to see my boys. They were always thrilled to be with me. Razor spared no expense for the taxpayers to make sure the twins and I had a good time together. However, Razor's influence waned throughout the divorce process. Sorry, Brandon, Razor remarked, shaking his head. The judge assigned to your case is a cranky old bastard. A year till obligatory retirement. Furthermore, the old goat has a soft spot for the federal government. So if I attempt any backdoor tactics, it may do you more damage than good. Razor attempted to cheer me up, saying, I have 2 guys trailing Lindsay. She declined federal protection, but that does not mean we can't keep an eye on her for your children's safety. Naturally, any inappropriate conduct seen may be utilized in court. I reflected on my current situation. It's just so unfair, I remarked. Razor mistook me for talking about his tactics. Brandon, anytime you find yourself in a fair fight, you've planned very poorly. Early one Sunday morning, 2 federal marshals came into my room and pulled me out of bed, saying, hurry up, we have to leave immediately. I was not a morning person, so everything was a blur to me. When I woke up fully, I found myself in the basement of the courthouse. The room was filled with a dozen people, marshals, sheriffs, feds, but everyone seemed to defer to an older gentleman sitting at a table with a secretary next to him. When a door opened and Razor and Lindsay, who seemed to be hungover, were taken into the room, Lindsay looked perplexed when she was put in a chair, and the room became silent as Razor approached the older guy behind the desk. The U.S. Marshal next to me said, That's the federal magistrate for this district. Razor began to speak in a low voice. Your Honor, we have requested this emergency hearing to have an immediate order of protection placed for the wards of one of my witnesses in an ongoing federal case. Razor turned around and said to Lindsay, I request that we have that woman's children removed from her domicile immediately, as she has placed these minors, the federal government's key witness children, in grave danger and harm's way. Lindsay sprang out of her chair. I've never done anything to harm my children, and I never will. One of the U.S. Marshals grabbed her shoulder and pushed her back into the chair. Razor proceeded, as if Lindsay had never spoken. We are dealing with some aggressive elements in this case, and I was concerned about witness tampering and outside forces attempting to compel our case. The lady there, he gestured to Lindsay, refused to accept protection, but I had resources assigned to her discreetly for her own safety. Razor then handed over certain documents to the federal magistrate. I also had one of the legal owners of the house give permission to install surveillance inside the domicile for security, an astute precaution, as it turned out. Razor nodded at a man who started a video on a 70-inch screen. The video showed the inside of my house, and Lindsay, obviously drunk, staggered in with a grungy-looking biker guy. When he turned, I recognized him. Ratchet, the damn guy I had met from the outlaw biker gang that had started this whole mess. Razor kept up a running commentary about Ratchet's criminal history, outstanding warrants, and how he met Lindsay that night and their interaction. As I watched them proceed up the stairs, the video switched to a camera in the bedroom. Fortunately, Razor fast-forwarded through Ratchet and Lindsay's sexual escapades, though watching them go through the motions of screwing at 30x speed had some comic appeal, especially when Lynn's Razor resumed regular pace, when it seemed Lindsay had gone asleep, fatigued from her exertions. Ratchet leaped from the bed and sprinted down the stairs, opening the front door to a swarm of motorcyclists who ransacked the home, emptying every drawer and shelf. When I saw one of the bikers unlock my son's bedroom door, I stood up, and the marshal next to me said, "Don't worry, we were monitoring the whole time." There was a highly armed SRT team at both doors, ready to barge in if necessary. My attention returned to Razor speaking as Lindsay's visitors departed the home on the camera monitor. "Your Honor, the SRT team was able to detain the males you saw in that video. All were armed, and each had a history of violent criminality. It is simply a blessing that no one was wounded." Lindsay began weeping, sobbing into her hands. Razor continued to speak. "The children have temporarily been relocated into a safe environment at a federal facility, and I request they be placed with their father and later in WITSEC for their own protection." Lindsay leaped out of her chair, defying a marshal's attempts to hold her. "You cannot take my children. God damn you." The federal magistrate glanced up at us before being bear-hugged by a guy dressed as a sheriff officer. "Ma'am, based on what I saw on camera and read in this report, you voluntarily let a known wanted criminal into your house. Thus, you put the children's welfare in peril with complete disregard for the repercussions of your conduct." I observed the magistrate sign some papers. "I so order that the minors in question be placed in the care of the male parent until such time as the authorities believe they are able to enter WITSEC. Any communication with the mother is forbidden and will be restricted until decided by the same governing authorities, with the youngster's welfare as the first consideration." Lindsay was still battling with the deputy when the federal magistrate got up and announced, "I deem these proceedings closed," before walking out. I was still surprised by the change of events when Razor approached me. "Brandon, how did you pull that off?" I asked. Razor smiled at me. "Most people don't change. It was only a matter of time until she did something dumb." He offered me a crooked smile. "For the record, every moment you believe you're the brightest person in the room, it's time to find another place." It seemed like déjà vu, the identical juvenile room, bed, and TV in the jail, but this time I was sitting in the chair with Razor behind me and Lindsay on the bed. "It's not over, Brandon," Lindsay yelled at me. "You're not taking me away from my babies." I glanced at her coldly. "You still want to do that sandpaper thing on me and wear me down?" I rose and went to the door. Lindsay scowled at me, and I didn't go closer her. The sandpaper may scratch, shred, and irritate, but after all that, the object is lovely and polished, so the sandpaper is useless. Lindsay gazed down at her hands after a lengthy quiet. I have no idea how that occurred. I knew I was drinking too much, but I didn't want to blame the alcohol. She paused, wiping her face. "I was at the gas station filling up when I walked out after paying, and my back tire was flat. It was the last straw. I've just begun weeping." She pulled her hair out of her eyes before continuing. "That biker guy seemed to appear out of nowhere. It turns out he's a relative from my mother's side. I knew him from my aunt's wedding many years ago. He just moved my vehicle out to the side and replaced the tire. I was terrified, but he simply kept talking. The more he spoke, the more at ease I felt. I didn't stop him from putting his arm around me. It felt so good to finally have someone understand what I was going through." She raised her head to look at me. "He refused the money I gave him, but agreed to buy me a drink. I said I wasn't fit to drive home. He claimed a drink would help calm me down. It was initially enjoyable to sit at the pub, trading old tales and catching up. The next thing I know, I'm being dragged out of bed and my children are being taken away from me." Lindsay glanced at Razor and said, "My own government is attempting to steal my children. What is the difference between you and them? What is the difference?" Razor cleared his throat and took a step forward. "Those folks are selfish men who have no feelings or regard for anybody or anything. They will destroy everything that stands in their way of getting what they want." Razor took a deep breath before continuing. "We work for the United States federal government, Brandon. I promise, this is all a massive misunderstanding. It was a huge mistake." Lindsay stretched out and touched my chest. "I need you to think. Listen to your heart." I waved my hand. "When I hear you speak, all I can hear is banjos, and all I can think is paddle faster, get away." During WITSEC orientation, I was thrown together with a Russian mob widow who had lost both of her children in a car bomb attempt and was desperately missing them. It was a strange road that gave me a new face as well as liposuction, which got rid of my belly fat faster than any exercise. It was a good fit, and I saw Razor's fingerprints. I now reside in a little southern town by the ocean, at the middle of nowhere, with a new name. The boys also got to choose their own names, and it took a while to convince them that being nicknamed Iron Man was not an acceptable moniker. We keep them busy, and they seldom ask questions about their past. The marshals informed me that my father had passed away, and I had given anything left in his will to charity. It turned out that I was entitled to a portion of the unclaimed and seized funds from Operation Great White, not $1 zillion, but enough for a boring lifestyle, and I still live in the same town. You know how people talk in a small town, so she has not had an easy time. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Could anybody recover from this? Please leave your opinions below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.